Well, good afternoon and welcome to, I can't remember if this is my first video for 2021 or my second one, or maybe I never did one, maybe I'm not doing this one. There is no world, it's all an illusion, all a dream, and the whole purpose of all of these spiritual videos and teachings and everything else is to bring about a transition in thought in the mind, or a shift in consciousness in the mind, to facilitate an experience of truth, which is something that is within each of us, but covered over by this veil or this dense cloud of thoughts, this conscious thinking. So the idea of then meditation and all of this, where the mind is stilled, and in collaboration with mind training, wherein we purify our thoughts by the reinterpreting of the attack and defense conceptual mechanisms that we use in the idea of communication, that verifies our identity, whether we choose to see ourselves as flesh or spirit. So obviously, in the pursuit of a spiritual experience, we are realigning or remembering that we are spirit. And the way that that transition occurs is through relationships. Relationships are really the key to the whole thing. So, and I can tell you that I guess, and speaking singularly, we're going from a dualistic perspective where I think I'm separate from everyone and everything with my own agenda and my own potential, to realising that I'm part of a whole. And relationships are the tools for bearing witness to the shift in consciousness, or the shift in perspective regarding that. Seeing myself as not separate from someone else, and my interests as not separate from someone else's interests, learning to be selfless rather than selfish, all of that sort of thing. So the idea then of relationships as learning tools, you are learning that it's better to give than to receive, although giving and receiving are the same. But the mind that is temporally aligned has need to learn of its unlimited supply, I guess, through the action of giving. And in relationships, generally, if you're a egoic human, which we all are, I am, you enter into a relationship with the idea of it fulfilling you, or you getting fulfillment, getting something out of it that verifies who you think you are and what you're about. And on the spiritual path, you realise that there's a new purpose for relationships, wherein what you're about and who you are doesn't depend upon you. It depends upon what's revealed to you in the experience, in the enlightenment of your mind, which shows you that you are whole and perfect, and then leaves you with the confrontation in that relationship, cause and effect relationship with, let's say, another person, witnessing where it is that the false belief that you have a need, or that you have a lack, or that you are desirous of something, perhaps, where that is. And it'll show up as, let's say, a trigger or a block or whatever, for healing, for forgiveness. But that depends upon how determined, and just looking for my dog, he's over there, all good. It depends upon how determined you are on an individual level to pursue the depth of the potential contained within each relationship you find yourself in. So we have all kinds of different relationships. It's really all the one relationship. I have a relationship with God, with higher self, with universal mind, whatever. But it shows up as, let's say, a committed relationship with a chosen partner, a relationship with people at a workplace situation or in the supermarket, all sorts of things like that. And each of these relationships has a potential to it. And in the idea that then, and I'll use the idea of a committed relationship because you get a much better reflection when somebody knows you better. You can't get away with too much bullshit. The potential contained in, let's say, a committed relationship, or if you're a course student, it says a special relationship. The potential contained within it, in any relationship, actually, I'm just using the committed one as an example here for a second, but the potential in any relationship can bring you right to the threshold of the void, or that jumping off point for your experience, which is talks about it in the course as a tiny moment of terror. And having confronted that tiny moment of terror, I'll tell you, it didn't seem very tiny at the time, but my enlightenment was top down. I had my experience first, and then about the purification of my mind afterwards, to ground that experience and to become useful, helpful, whatever, hopefully. But the potential contained within the relationship is something that you access through being vigilant for your purpose in the relationship, to see where it is you feel like you want to play the victim, or where it is you feel like you want to be in charge of something or control something. All of these sorts of things that go on within the framework of a relationship, which is why relationships can be so back and forth and up and down and same shit, different day, all of that. But the potential of any relationship is a totality. The potential contained within it, if you are willing to give the relationship to God, to join, let's say, with that other person in a total joining, in a devotion to God, so which is wholeness, whole self. It contains the entirety of the potential within my mind, let's say, keeping it singular, to bring me to a point of that tiny moment of terror. And that can happen all the time, and people have it, let's say, in a social situation. That tiny moment of terror can be reflected in, let's say, a pregnant pause at a social event where everybody's talking, and then all of a sudden no one knows what to say, and it gets to the point where if no one says anything, you know, it's going to be too late, and we're all going to be like, oh my God, how hopeless are we? Can't even have a conversation about things. But the purpose then, if you were in that situation, perhaps the purpose you would glean, or the purpose you would perceive in that situation, would be one where you would be aware of that moment of discomfort, that moment of anxiety coming up, and see it as the tip of a mighty iceberg that, if you had the, let's say, the wherewithal or the technology or the willingness perhaps to give that whole situation over to God, you could go right to the bottom of the potential contained in that situation and pop out the other side experientially. And it happens. People tell me all the time that they have out-of-body experiences or non-physical experiences all the time from just weird situations, and they're not even meditating or not anything. You know, it can happen washing the dishes. Moment of frustration perhaps. But every relationship we enter into has the potential within it for the totality of the healing of the mind, because it's a constant reflection, a constant reminder of purpose and the integrity that we've taken on board to hold ourselves accountable to within the relationship. And there's times in every relationship where one person or another will feel like running away. You know, this person's trying to control me, or I feel so limited or held down by this relationship, and all these sorts of stories that we tell ourselves, failing to realize that literally those emotional triggers, those anxious, I don't even know what you'd call them, but those anxious moments are literally opportunities to go beyond what we perceive as the potential the relationship contains, and pop out the other side through an action of forgiveness of the situation that's showing up within ourselves, so that it no longer activates us whenever it comes around again, you know, the next time. And I'm pretty sure everyone would have had a experience of relationships where you bang your heads against the wall over the same silly things day after day after day. And I've met couples who've had 50 years of marriage that just do nothing but bicker at each other, which that's a hell of a slow learning circle, but whatever it takes, it takes. But the idea then that you would adjust to your pain, the idea then that you would reject the relationship in favour of a better one when times get tough, or when there seems to be something confronting you that you feel uncomfortable about, is a misuse of the potential in the relationship. And I'm only saying that for my own self. I mean, everyone has their own limit, how much they can take. And but as a student of A Course in Miracles, the realization that my mind is limitless through the grace of the Holy Spirit within me allows me a moment's reprieve from having to deal with the relationship on my own terms, in deferral to higher mind for a miracle, for something to shift in me, to allow whatever that energetic oppression or trigger is to be healed, you know, to allow it to be done with. And then the next time it comes around, when that prayer of the heart for that healing of that particular thing, you know, and it's like when it's in the emotional crux of it, when you're right there in the thick of it, you're going to have an honest prayer. When you're thinking about it in retrospect, it's kind of like, oh yeah, it wasn't so bad, or oh, I'm glad that's finished, or whatever. But literally the opportunity is in your face. So learning to be vigilant then, and take advantage of those opportunities, to be willing to give them to God, you know, let go and let God, is part of the disciplinary mind training structure, I guess, that we're learning on a spiritual path. Whether you're a student of A Course in Miracles, or whether you follow a discipline like a Buddhist discipline, or a Hindu, or whatever. And I had a beautiful interaction this morning with a brother in India who just said some very nice words in particular. Not that I really am on the lookout for very nice words, but they just sort of struck a chord with me, and it brought me to a place in my realization in dealing with others, let's say the idea of others, of an energetic place that I was at also many, many years ago, where the idea of being so desperate or so passionate perhaps about finding some kind of true reference was something that just made me feel so good when I stumbled across someone that actually spoke the truth. Even though at that time in my life I didn't really understand it, I couldn't put two and two together because I had a head full of everything else going on. I mean, it took me several miracles and quite a lot of effort and prayer and everything else to get to a point where the shift in my consciousness occurred to such a level that I realized that my way of thinking and seeing had changed to a point where I couldn't go back. Not that I would even want to go back to my old way of thinking, you know, but You know, it was just nice anyway. I just thought, you know, and it always sort of fills you up with a renewed vigour to express and to offer what it is you've discovered. You know, and it's like Jesus says in the Bible, 2 in 10,000 will hear this. Well, man, if I can find 1 in 10,000 who's willing to hear this and enter into a teaching, learning relationship that's totally committed and, you know, all of that sort of thing, that would be totally awesome. But the way that relationships go in the world, I mean, whether you're on a spiritual path or not, people get married, get divorced, fall in love, fall out of love, all these sorts of stories that we have about relationships, a whole gamut of things, you know, but the way that relationships go, there are these little superficial ones, there are sort of fairly extended ones, and then there are lifelong sort of ones. And allowing and accepting that each relationship is perfect for what it has offered, is offering, and all of that sort of thing is also part of the journey, I guess, if you want to call it a journey, part of the learning process. So, but, and I meet a lot of people that, well, not a lot, but I meet people from time to time who say to me, oh, I feel like I just need to run away and go and have my own space so I can process stuff. And it's like, man, that's not where it's at. I mean, that's a long, slow, you know, the technology of being an ascetic or something like that is an ancient, going back to the Vedantic period, you know, in Hindu culture. And it's not where it's at today. You know, where it's at today, the resurrection has occurred 2,000 years ago, and everything, regardless whether you want to believe what I'm going to tell you or not, everything is in alignment with that. Absolutely everything. Through that idea, which is now in mind, in consciousness as a collective thing, that there is no death. So, and whilst that was a prevalent idea in scriptures prior to that time, it was the action and the witness to the experience, to the happening, that solidified it and made it experiential. You know, and that whole thing is experiential. And even though you'll say to me, oh, well, that was 2,000 years ago, how can I experience the resurrection now? It's like, well, when you want to, you will. You'll understand what it is for you. Because the resurrection of your mind, the resurrection, your experience of Christhood is the same now exactly as it was 2,000 years ago. I mean, we don't wear sandals and robes, but hey, it's the same experience in mind, even though nowadays we tell ourselves, oh yeah, but we're all scientific. You know, it's like, what a load of shit. I remember that Hurricane Katrina, when it went through the United States and everyone was stuck in that football stadium together and the power was off for 3 days. People turned into animals, raping and killing and beating each other up for what? We're scientific. We're not fucking scientific. We're not anything. We're just primitive species with a very, very tiny grasp. Even my understanding of things, having experienced enlightenment, a very tiny grasp on a picture of the whole. You know, but the idea of salvation as a whole is something that the entirety or the entire vibratory frequency of the continuum is about now. And you just jump into it wherever you're at. You just become willing to play a part. It's like, all right, I want out. I want to wake up from this dream, from this. I mean, where I am here on the beach is not too bad, but, you know, you could be forgiven for thinking this was a beautiful dream. And the forgiven dream, as it talks about in the Course in Miracles, has nothing to do with finding yourself in a better place where things are more agreeable. It comes about through partly the realization that there's nothing in the world that you would want to participate in, even if everything was offered to you for free and everything was offered, it's on a platter, which in a sense it is, but that's another teaching. So, yeah. Anyway, relationships. You got to use them, use the potential in them. And I guess the reason that I'm making this video, finger on my nose, is because I've been in, up until last week, a committed relationship which had so many shifts and changes over the last 12, 13 years that where it started out at the beginning was a whole different kind of specialness compared to where it ended up. And I'm totally grateful for where it ended up in the whole thing. And I'm looking for myself, I guess, in the idea of how I feel now. And you know, when people come out of a relationship, they feel like, oh, I've got to go and find myself again, or what's some other things people say? I lost myself in that relationship or to that person. All of that nonsense that we tell ourselves. And it's like, well, I'm looking at all of that nonsense, seeing now, given it a few days or a week or whatever it's been, where I'm at in my heart with things, and I'm all good with it. I'm totally all good with it. Having said that and made that declaration, you know, no words pass the lips without them being bullshit, and never say never and all of that. So I expect or I hope that something is going to come back to me to show me perhaps where I really am with things, in that idea of the ending of the relationship and what I feel I've lost there, or anything like that. You know, I'm looking for any little scrap of something that takes me out of my sense of inner peace and sense of self. And as you become, I've put my finger on my nose, as I become more what would you call it, purified, more spiritual, you have to be more vigilant, because the ego becomes cunning and uses a lot of spiritual stuff to go, oh yeah, it's all cool, it's all meant to be, you know, and to, you know, trying to really hide the depth and the true emotionality of any particular situation or relationship. But so far so good. So far just nothing but total gratitude. And that in part and in whole is due to the commitment and the devotion that was given to the relationship right from the beginning, and the staying true to that, even though it wasn't always easy to stay true to it. I guarantee it was. There was lots of times there where the idea of wanting to change how it looked would enter into my mind and into my partner's mind, I'm sure. And we had our converting moments, which is what it's about. You know, that's the whole purpose of a relationship. If nothing happened in it, you know, you wouldn't, you'd never get involved. So anyway, well, that's about it. We're just about back at the car now, somewhere, wherever I parked, up a bit further. I don't know if you can see my dog there. There's Pedro, and he's just spied another dog playing in the water down there. So I'll give him the benefit of that relationship for him at the level he's at, because everything is mind, everything is part of the whole, and presents that opportunity to me to engage and appreciate and all of that sort of thing. So, all right, I love you, and take it easy. Do your lessons. I'm posting the daily lessons up on my page at the moment, up to lesson 50, because people tell me sometimes that they can't get past lesson 30, so they need some help. But so up to lesson 50, and after that you've got to do it by yourself. There's plenty of stuff online, plenty of course teachers, helpers, whatever, mighty companions, all of that sort of stuff. So you can check that out if you're into it, and you've got to be into it to get something out of it. What you put in, you get back. So, all right, I love you. Take it easy. See you next time.